So we are back with a brand new movie on What If Naruto Was Saved Raven and Champion of the Gods movie, but before we start, be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video. Now let's begin the story. The battlefield seemed to disintegrate from the sheer power that was being thrown by the two titanic chakra-empowered teenage warriors. Their power seemed to redesign the landscape itself, while stirring a storm of mass proportions that engulfed the skies of the elemental nations. The first warrior looked no older than 17, his hair as dark as the pits of hell, while seemingly impersonating a duck's ass, his mismatched eyes the left reminiscent of a symbol for biohazard, and the right a solid purple with ripples emanating from his pupil. His clothing consisted of a long dark cloak with red nimbus clouds that seemed to have been scattered in a completely random pattern, along with black Anbu-styled clothing. His name was Sasuke Uchiha, the, finally, last of the Uchiha clan. His opponent was a spiky-haired blonde youth of about equal age. He wore a dark orange trench coat with black flames that ended at his knees and parted down the middle, revealing a white flannel shirt and black cargo-style Anbu pants, although the thing that stuck out the most about the young man had to be his sapphire-colored eyes that too had a ripple pattern surrounding his pupil. His eyes so blazingly bright that they themselves could light up even the darkest of places. His name is Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. The sight was one that could put any and all who watched this fight between the two warriors in complete awe, claiming that these two have moved far beyond any of their peers' expectations, a single swipe from either of their swords decimating entire forests. Sasuke, we don't have to continue, we can finally stop, the war is over, Madara is dead, you even helped me kill him, we can finally stop, so please. Naruto yelled over the crash of their clashing swords. Naruto's a black Kahirazukuri-style Daido with an 8-sided shuriken pommel. I'm sorry Naruto, we both know I won't be welcomed back even with the death of Madara, we both know my crimes are too great for them to allow me to continue to live, Sasuke told his blonde friend. Sasuke held his sword Chikudo against Naruto's Daido, both battling for supremacy. Sasuke, this is where I disagree. Naruto yelled, momentarily stunning Sasuke in his place. He kicked his friend in the chest, catching him unawares and making him fly back several yards from the force behind his attack. Sasuke didn't give him a moment of rest, and in less than a second he was once again upon Naruto. The chakra running through their blades seemed to reject each other as they were thrown apart by a blast of energy, sending them careening back several dozen meters. Sasuke, you've called me a dope, you've called me dead last, but in these final moments, please think of me as your brother one last time, because this is where we permanently go our separate ways, Naruto said as he crawled to his feet, a large gash across the side of his face. Naruto, you have always been my brother, fighting for me time and time again tooth and nail to bring me back, no matter what I did, you are and always will be my brother, Sasuke said, a deep cut on his left arm bleeding heavily and a slight smile on his face. Sasuke, you need to hold on to whatever you are feeling right now, that feeling of happiness and pride. Naruto paused, taking a breath as he looked down, only for his chakra to suddenly spike dramatically, because if you don't, you'll die. Naruto finished, vanishing in a flash of a gold and crimson colored light. The next thing Sasuke knew was extreme pain as he was sent careening back from a single punch to his abdomen, twisting to land on his feet, only to see Naruto appear in front of him and send a roundhouse to his side hard enough to cause a hole in the ground, but not enough to kill someone like Sasuke. Uzumaki style. Dimensional shift, the voice rang out through the clearing, seemingly cancelling out all other noise, allowing an eerie feeling to stretch for miles around. Slowly pulling himself out of his little crater, Sasuke looked upon his former teammate in awe at what he saw. Behind Naruto was an ostensibly dark void that drew in the surrounding light, giving it a contrasting cold feeling to Naruto's warm friendly smile he now held on his face, eyes closed. Sasuke, I've found a way to save you, like I said I would from day one, Naruto said, motioning to the void behind him, a flash of pain quickly flying across his face, only to be hidden by his smile. Naruto, what exactly have you summoned? Sasuke asked with fear and pride, fear from the astonishing power of the man in front of him, pride that this man was his brother in all but blood. This is a key to find your way home, a place where none of this ever happened, no massacre, no war, nothing, a fresh start, go join your clan, teach your younger self, find the girl you loved, start over, Naruto said, a genuine smile on his face. I don't think I fully understand. Sasuke said, slowly walking up to the portal. In this world, most of the pain caused was from a form of my existence that I don't think I can fully explain, something with me being the child of destiny. Well, how do you fix something caused before the birth of said child? Naruto asked, a smile on his face. Sasuke let that set in his mind for a few minutes as he thought this over, wondering what exactly Naruto was talking about, and then it dawned on him. That right, Sasuke, the only way to fix it was to get rid of it, so I found a place where I never existed, Sasuke. I mean, I do have a counterpart there, but the prophecy was never made. The Jinchuriki looked at with a smile as angels to all. Madara never lifted a finger as he and the first Hokage ruled side by side. The Uzumaki never died out, but my mother still married my father, so I still exist. Just Not how I was, Naruto said before his face let the pain completely escape the mask of happiness it had held. Naruto, what the hell are you saying? Sasuke demanded, looking at the blonde, hoping upon hope Naruto wasn't saying what he thought he was saying. What I'm saying is that there I do not exist, the blonde said through gritted teeth before he fell to his knees, Sasuke quickly rushing over to make sure his friend was okay. Sasuke, you can't stay here, if you go back you die, but you go there you live. The price of this jutsu is my life, created more as an escape route for my clan. My mother was just left behind unfortunately, the blonde said, finally opening his eye revealing pained ocean blue eyes. Naruto, what are you saying? Naruto never gave him the chance to finish as he quickly leapt to his feet and kicked Sasuke into the void that was starting to close. Good luck my brother, Naruto whispered only to barely be heard by his longtime rival. For what seemed like an indefinite he lied there feeling his life draining away, hoping for only the best of his friend. Naruto had finally accepted his death. Sasuke was free. Sakura no longer had any need for him as she now had Lee. He knew Kiba and Ino would soon be getting married. 16 or not, they were still ninja, and if the war said anything their lives could disappear at any moment. Neji and Tenten were expecting a child in 3 months, and Shikamaru and Temari. Gaara was now happily married to Mitsuri, without the fear of Shikaku. It seemed like everything was slowly starting to look to a brighter future. It was hard to think of the other rookies that he had known that died in the war. Looking down at his hand, he saw what was to be his wedding band still on his finger, tears sliding down his face as he remembered losing the love of his life. Taking a slow and shallow breath he began to relax, looking forward to finally seeing her once again. The bad. It seemed like the gods weren't going to allow him that peace as he suddenly found himself lying down on a golden marbled color floor, several ancient beings looking down upon him with interest. Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, a loud voice boomed across the large chamber, drawing his attention to a beautiful female with long platinum-colored hair and gold eyes, clad in a white formal kimono, with sakura petals dancing along the bottom trim of the dress. Allow me to formally welcome you to my court, young Uzumaki, as you now stand in the court of the gods, she said, drawing his eyes to hers, an amused smirk played onto her lips. So am I to believe you are Kami? The young man asked, getting only a nod in response. Looking around he saw other gods in various attire from battle armor to more formal kimonos, but it was one that stood out to him the most. And him also to guess your Shinigami? The young Uzumaki asked the large demon-looking god with horns and a long blonde mane, adorned in a completely white kimono, the hilt of a ninjato poking out of his sleeve, again getting only a nod in response to his question. I see, the young man simply stated before sitting in an upright position. May I ask what the gods want from me now? The blonde spoke, causing some gods to somewhat flinch as his voice held years of turmoil and sadness. The tone was one of a broken warrior with nothing left to truly fight for. Naruto, the Shinigami spoke, gaining the boy's attention. You are champion of the gods, surpassing any human to have ever existed in the past and future. You have overcome immense obstacles to ever block your path, and now as you look upon us we ask you, Naruto, our champion, will you accept the next mission we need your assistance with? The dark voice of the Shinigami asked, his voice emanating from no one specific spot. And what would the gods need my assistance for, pray tell, I ask, Naruto said, letting his formal training as the Hokage take over. Naruto, as you see us now we will not always be, for we will be leaving my grandson to take over this realm, as the rest of us need to continue on. We may be gods, but even gods can't work like that, and me being the only god that can sire a child, will leave the young one to watch over this realm. The Shinigami spoke, the gods all saying something in one form or another to concur what Death himself had told the blonde mortal. I see, still what does that have to do with me? Naruto asked, already seeing where this is going. We foresee times of great danger that he cannot interfere. We need you, our champion, our own god among men, to aid the future in the fight of good versus evil, Kami said, this time pride seeming to leak out as she stared at the blonde, a gaze that filled him with warmth. That of which he believed to be the love of a mother to her child. I see, then I make one request, the blonde spoke as he climbed to his feet, turning he stared at the Shinigami. I wish to see her one last time please. The young man pleaded to the god more than he requested. I see, that was all the god had said before his eyes flashed a type of silver behind his mask. In front of Naruto a misty column spiraled up only to slowly forming a silhouette of a human body. It wasn't long before the mist dispersed. In its place stood a young woman no older than Naruto himself. She had long flowing raven-like hair and pale lavender-colored eyes and a kimono that matched her beauty. Quickly from the side of the beauty before him, young man finally broke completely. Tears welled up in his eyes and slipped down his face. His knees gave out from under him, no longer having the strength to carry his weight and hold up his burdens. Hinata, he said through the tears as he reached out his hand to gently grab hers. The contact alone allowed another wave of sobs to come from the blonde warrior. The young woman went to her knees and tightly hugged him to herself. Naruto, she cooed in his ear over and over again, slowly pulling himself back together. He looked at her, a smile on his face. "I've missed you, love," he said, brushing a strand of her hair behind her ear. "I have missed you too, Naruto, but I need you to let me go, please. You're only hurting my memory if you don't," she said with a smile as she kissed him on the lips, surprising him before he returned the kiss, only to then break it. "Hinata, I don't think I can," he said, tears again threatening to spill from his sapphire-colored eyes. "Naruto, please, I want you to be happy. Remember, I will always be here waiting for you for eternity if I have to, but I want you to be happy. Find someone, be with them, allow them to brighten your life as you have mine," she said, a tear sliding down her own cheek. As they continued to hold each other, each crying silently for the other, the gods watched with interest. "Surely, sister, there must be something we can do?" The god of death asked quietly, looking at his younger sister, also known as Kami. "You're right, it would seem to be best if we were not to separate these two, they are each other's anchor," she said in response to her brother's question. As he looked down at the two, he quickly looked at her and laughed. "Good, because I never liked that whole star-crossed lovers thing," he said, getting a laugh from several of the other gods. "So is it agreed we help these two?" Kami asked the other gods, getting a nod from all the others, including her twin sister Yami, who looked like an inverse version of Kami herself. "Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, we have deemed that we will help you and the one you love by allowing you two to stand side by side as we send you to run your course for your mission," Kami announced, creating a newly formed fire in the two young warriors' eyes. "But there is a drawback due to the young Hinata Hyuga being in all sense of the word dead. We cannot completely bring her back, even that is impossible for us gods," Shinigami said, making the two before him quickly become depressed once again. "So instead we will give you a unique chance. We will offer the young Hyuga a chance at reincarnation. She may not look the same or feel the same, but your souls will find each other again. Two souls so perfectly made for each other, can't stand being with another," the god said, making the two again switch from despair and helplessness to a slight hopefulness. The gods could only sweat drop as a collective thought ran through all their heads. Did we make them bipolar? "This is your only chance, so take it or leave it," the Shinigami stated, looking at the two, a new fire burning brightly in their eyes. "I, Shinigami-sama, I will take this one chance to be with my husband once again," Hinata stated, her voice brimming with a will of fire she was raised into believing. With a nod, all the gods turned their heads towards Naruto, eager to receive his answer. "Then Shinigami, whatever it may be, I will accept your request and take on this mission, but if it is far into the future as you have said, then I guess I will be going into sort stasis-like sleep, or will I be reborn as well?" the blonde asked, revealing his intelligence. "That is correct, we will be putting you asleep in the spot where all the events are centered around. You will be in the realm of limbo, resting in a deep slumber awaiting for the day to arrive and for your two awakening." Yami spoke for the first time, having always enjoyed watching over the young man. She would now get to watch him in his dreamlike state, even from a distance. Darkness and dreams were her territory, and if one were to sleep for that long, this allowed her someone to actually talk to, rather than watch for a brief period. "Then let's do this," Naruto said as he stood up, taking one last look at his love, and with a nod he looked at the gods, and giving them the nod she gave him, the next thing he knew was darkness. May he bring the world from the darkness once again and show it the light that is Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. Who am I? Where am I? Is this death? Or am I actually alive? Darkness, it's everywhere. Why? Is this what awaits us when we die? There was a sudden sound like that of a drop of water in a pond that seemed to resound throughout the endless abyss that was darkness. It was followed by a faint light. "That noise, I see it, the light," the being thought as it soon found itself being drawn to the miraculous beautiful light granted by the darkness. It wasn't long after that a young man was able to be seen drawing closer to the light, seemingly floating in space. The young man had long spiky blonde hair that hung past his shoulders, a unique type of flak jacket with numerous pockets, dyed a deep black-like color that gave a yin-yang like contrast to the white-headed cloak that lay open, revealing the things underneath it. Like his white baggy pants with black piping running down the sides and crimson-orange medical-colored tape strapping his shuriken and kunai pouches to either thigh. Slowly our blonde hero reached out to touch this unconventional-like veil. The veil was again showed a very distinctness like that of water, as his slight touch caused it to ripple outwards from his finger. On top of that, as he touched it, had given a great deal of resistance, showing that the veil was not just a window, but also that of a barrier. The flash of memories went through his mind. A deal. It had something to do with a champion. Names, places, and faces seemed to flash through his head, not in a sequence though, but seemingly all at once. He roared out in pain, grabbing his head as he fell to his knees. He seemed to stay like that for a few minutes as his mind tried to process all it was giving him. It seemed to flash through his head once in a while, stopping on something that seemed to be really noteworthy, something that really caught his attention, and like a flip of a switch it all just stopped, with the image of only one person in his mind. To him she was like a goddess, her long raven-colored hair and lavender-like eyes that lit him with joy as she warmed him with just a smile. Anada, he spoke aloud, his voice seemed to want to call out to her, but in the recess of his conscience, he knew what was preventing him from seeing her, and it was right in front of him, almost taunting him, as if to say he can't. Slowly he stood up, clenching his fist and digging his nails into his palm to the point that his hand started to bleed as he looked at the veil. Nothing is going to stop me from seeing her again, he thought as he scowled at the barrier that seemed to hold him in the endless darkness, the same veil keeping him from the only light to ever truly brighten his life. Holding his hand out to his side, a swirling ball of energy started to form as his eyes change. Looking down, he started to throw in something to his usual Rasengan as it started to change, giving it an atom-like effect with several rings spinning around the chakra sphere. Looking back up at the barrier, he let out a chuckle as he reeled his arm back. Seton Rasengan, he yelled as he slammed the ball into the veil. Silence. And then. Naruto. Jump City. If one were to take away the screams of humans being torn apart and tortured by demons and take away the giant demon with half a dozen glowing red eyes that seemed to steal your very soul, one would say that the city seemed very desolate. Buildings seemed to burn and lean on one another to remain standing in some way or form, one seeming to collapse every so often. The only things that seemed to be alive was a group of teenagers that wore an assortment of things that you don't usually find a regular person wearing, though that itself is not important. The giant demon that seemed to tower above the city, looking down at the ones who chose to defy him, to try to rebel against him, yeah, that part was important. The creature could only chuckle in his throat as he looked at their fruitless attempt to deny his rule. This demon was none other than the mighty Trigon, one of the few lords of hell. He took pleasure in chaos and destruction, got off to fear and embraced the woe of others. He was a monster like no other and took absolute pleasure in it. That was until a large black raven rose out of the ground right in front of him. He watched as a girl in a white cloak and leotard stepped out of the dark bird, her long dark hair curtaining her shoulders. Her dark yet pale skin seemed to shine with a new life than it had in years. Next to her was a young man that seemed to look like a traffic light in his green tights and red shirt, along with his black cape, his domino mask hiding his eyes and identity. His hair a dark untamable mess. These two were one of two of Jump City's more notorious super teens. Raven and Robin. So my daughter has decided to grace us with her presence, has she? The dark being asked in a mocking tone, his voice bone-chilling and heart-wrenching. It was enough to tear away any mere mortal's terror. Hello father, the young girl in white said, adding as much venom to the word father as she could. I've come to send you to the place you belong. Looking the demon right in the eyes, not a trace of fear in her voice. She had confidence that she had the power to defeat her father. Her friends believed in her, and if they had enough confidence to believe in her, then she could accomplish anything. Oh really now, and where might that be, as I've taken quite a liking to this mortal plane, he said again in his dark mocking tone. I think it would make a nice summer vacation spot for me, don't you think? He asked her rhetorically, a bloodthirsty grin seeming to stretch upon his face as he watched her hand ignite in a wide aura. I've come to send your ass back to hell, she declared as she started to chant Zerath, Metrion, Zinthos. If she could put as much power as she could into this one attack, she might be able to do it. She might be able to finish off her father. Gathering the amount of energy she deemed acceptable, the young demoness released a large beam of pure white energy at him. Hoping this one attack was enough, it looked like a surefire win too, as the titans all held their breath, watching and believing that this was the end. That was till the demon's smirk never left his face, even as the powerful beam tried to drill its way through his chest. Is that all you've got, girl? You need more, more, more. Throughout it all the demon only laughed at her, and it soon dawned upon her that she was never a match for him. And the large demon continued to laugh even as he smacked the beam away and watched as it obliterated several buildings from existence. My daughter, do you really believe you could fight me, the one woe's given you your powers? You're just a joke. I am Trigon, king of hell, and you are but a tool for me to have used to get to this world, he said, his voice stern and unapproving. He started to stand up while holding out one of his hands. Like a marionette on invisible wires, the young girl was suddenly pulled by an unknown force into his clutches. Titans go. The young teen in tights yelled as he pulled out a long metal bow staff and ran to try and rush the demon. At once all the titans charged, trying to free their friend who was struggling to get out of the grip of the grand demon. Nonetheless, it proved to be a fruitless attempt as the large crimson-colored demon swatted them away like an annoying fly with enough force to cause them to create a crater around their bodies. No, the girl in white yelled as she watched her friends get beat down as if it was nothing. Now Raven, let's not be too hasty, we won't want your little friends to die now, do we? Trigon asked mockingly her as he started to slowly tighten his grip, crushing the girl that had been thrashing around in his palm. Inside her mind she knew it was hopeless. They were powerless against her father. They were teenagers, super-powered teenagers, yet teenagers nonetheless. What could they have hoped to have done? She had all but given up hope. No one could save her, and no one could save her friends. Please, she cried in her mind alone, tears sliding down her cheek as she hoped for some miracle to help her. If you really wish for a miracle then there is always an option, a voice rang through her mind, one that she did not recognize, yet she still felt she should have known the voice, as if the very voice was her, yet it wasn't. Then with that voice a single name ran through her mind, one that her very soul called out to. One that she called out to. Naruto. Then it happened. Like the judgment of a vengeful god the sky began to tear itself apart, twisting and tearing like a beast fighting against the very fabric of reality, along with the unusual phenomenon, a loud roar that will forever haunt all of those that could hear it for the rest of their lives, permeated throughout the area, easily reaching even the furthest corners of the globe. Trigun himself felt a sense of dread as he watched the sky rip open, and the wind itself seemed to howl in pain from the unexpected cut through space. If the ripped fabric of reality wasn't enough then neither was the sudden and immense pillar of crimson energy that easily trumped even Trigun in size, exploding down and colliding with the ground, causing it to crack and lift, rising from the epicenter of the beam, then exploding outwards in something of a wave and continuing far into the distance. Slowly the light started to dissipate as the rip in space started to close. As the light faded away there kneeled a young man whose mere presence exuded raw power and energy enough to make all of the seven realms shake. Slowly the man stood, one could tell he was in his mid to late teens, his golden-colored hair casting a shadow over his eyes as he stood before Trigun. Trigun shook himself from his shock, at first feeling fear from the very energy he radiated, only to then feel contempt that a being as small as him could have ever instilled fear in the might king of hell. "Well, what do we have here? Have you come to pledge your loyalty to the king of demons, boy?" Trigun spoke, thinking he miscalculated the boy's earlier power, writing it off as nothing more than a fluke, no longer being able to feel even an ounce of power compared to what he previously felt. Maybe the boy was just another powerful warrior come to swear his loyalty to him. Looking up, the blonde-haired teen stared at the demon with his soul-piercing bright blue rippled eyes, simply staring or almost studying the demon before him, giving a quick glance at the area around him, surveying his surroundings, till he turned to look at the demon once again. "Well, for one, I don't see the king of demons around here, do you?" the boy asked almost mockingly. "So if he's not here, do you really believe I can pledge my loyalty to him?" the young man said with a laugh. "You insolent pest, I, Trigun the Destroyer, am the king of demons," the demon roared. "Who does this pathetic waste of space think he is? I am the king of demons," he yelled in his mind as the young blonde suddenly stopped laughing and looked at the demon with a look made Trigun physically flinch. "You are not the king, you are just a pathetic little demon who's lost its master," the boy said. His eyes started to bleed into crimson color, his pupils slowly morphing into slits like that of a cat's or worse a fox. Trigun looked down at the boy lividly, as some mere no-name mortal called him a pathetic little demon. "Who do you think you are?" "I have no master," Trigun roared as he went to slam his fist into the boy. Raven looked away, believing the young man she found quite handsome about to die. Wait, I don't even know who he is, and I'm already thinking things like that," she thought, berating herself. Although it was to everyone's surprise, Trigun included, when the mere boy in his opinion raised his hand and stopped Trigun's fist as if it was nothing. "You call yourself the king of demons? You disgrace the title. I have met the previous king and have fought at his side. I was the closest person to him in a way," he said mysteriously. "Well, till he passed everything on to me." Crimson once again erupted outward around the man in a brilliant display, acting like a vortex of swirling energy around him at speeds unmatched by anything humans could ever hope to create. Including the Flash. Above him, an ethereal-like crimson-colored fox's head-like structure materialized, releasing one of the fiercest roars one would ever experience. The roar itself threw Trigun back like he was nothing but a wet paper towel, causing him to at the same time release his captive. The young man watched as Trigun dropped Raven before he vanished in a flash of crimson energy. Raven was fading in and out of consciousness as she fell from the insane height, her powers far too drained for her to stop her descent, only for her to suddenly halt as the young man appeared in a flash of the red energy he seemed to continue to use. Except there was a tremendous difference in his appearance than before, which she took note of as he held her in his arms bridal style, which when she noticed cold helped the blush that adorned her cheeks. Behind him were 10 beautiful long blonde kitsune tails, along with what appeared insect-like wings on his back stopping their descent, a single ox-like horn on the right side of his head, while the nails on his hands seemed to sharpen and elongate to the point that they resembled claws. Naruto looked at her surprised for the first time as he caught her long raven-colored hair cascaded around herself in his arms, and her insanely dark lavender-colored eyes. As he looked at her all he couldn't stop himself from asking the first thought to enter his mind. "Hinata?" She looked at him with a sad expression as he mistook her for someone apparently dear to him, if the look in his eye was anything to judge upon. "I am sorry, but my name's Raven," she said with a slight stutter for the first time in her life, as she looked away. He could only shake his head as he looked up to the stars. "Oh, the irony, I think Kami takes pleasure in messing with me. Somewhere far, far away." The goddess could only sneeze as she watched the mortals running around this new world her and her brothers and sisters had recently created, causing the person she was watching to lose focus and get run over by the young female vampire on a bike. The goddess could only shake her head as she watched as she thought of the only person that would talk about her. Only Naruto could make me mess up without messing up with her job done, even if it wasn't done according to plan. She knew how this story would end as she vanished in a flash of light. Jump City. Naruto was pulled out of his thoughts as he gently put Raven on her feet as they landed, looking over to where he launched Trigun. He held his hand in front of his chest, while his other motion for Raven to get back. Slowly dark energy was pulled from his chest into a ball, till it got to the point he had to hold it above his head. Slowly it started to condense itself from a truck tire to that of something smaller than a marble. Leaning his head back, he dropped the black ball catching it in his mouth, causing the ground around him to dip into a 4-kilometer-wide crater. As Trigun stood up shaking the ruble off of him as he looked back anger bleeding from his eyes, well that was till he saw what the boy was doing and what he looked like with only one thing passing through his mind, "Aw fuck. Vajgama." Raven watched as the man in front of her as he swallowed the small orb of energy and could only look stunned and curious as the ground suddenly dipped and cracked beneath him. She watched as he suddenly hunched forward, an evil gleam in his eyes as he opened his mouth while giving a small roar from the back of his throat, which she was sure that she was the only one who could hear it. They watched as nothing happened, but it was as Trigun gave a single laugh that an explosion of energy appeared right in front of him, seemingly dwarfing him until he was consumed by the mass energy that erased him from existence somewhat permanently, while it also destroyed everything within a large area around him, leaving physically nothing behind. Raven was surprised to the extreme as she watched this man not only kill her father, but obliterate him from her life. She was overwhelmed with what she thought was gratitude. But slowly it started to get painful till she fell to her knees, releasing a scream that echoed across the city, waking her friends causing them to look at her as they watched her clutch herself as black energy poured into her and started to vortex around her. They watched as the blonde-haired man casually walked up to her, his eyes still a bloody red. His tail swishing behind him which started to dissipate into darkness. Naruto raised a single hand as he looked into the girl's eyes, all 6 of them. Her father was stubborn and not wanting to give up, yet was trying to pose as his daughter as a last chance. But Naruto was not having it and with what most would perceive as a simple flick to her forehead, launched the soul of Trigun from her body and immediately turned to dust causing poor Raven to collapse into Naruto's arms. It was one last simple pulse of energy from her before she lost consciousness in his embrace that caused everything that happened due to Trigun's reign start to reverse. The sky slowly returned to its blue color, the destruction acting as if it never happened. The demons were yanked back into hell as the grass that was once dead returned greener than it's ever been before. And all Raven could remember before she passed out was sapphire-like eyes and a smile from the whiskered man bringing a smile to her own face as she spoke. "Raven," a voice called out to her while shaking her slightly to bring her back into the conscious world. Her eyes slowly started to flutter open, her vision fighting to come back to her. "Oh, Raven," the voice called out again, drawing out her name. Once her vision started to settle, she could finally see who was disturbing her time of peaceful sleep. Next to her sat a young lad of at the most 14, with light green skin and equally darker colored hair. He had sharp-looking canine teeth, along with a black jumpsuit that made him look only slightly out of place in the large living room of the Titan Tower. "What do you want, Beast Boy?" she asked, trying to roll over and go back to sleep. "Yes, sorry about that, Ray, but that blonde-haired guy is out on the roof," and well, he never got to finish as the moment he said the blonde's name and where he was she disappeared into her signature raven-like shadow. "Geez, yeah, I'd think she would at least have a decent conversation with me first," Beast Boy said as he stood up and left the room. Titan Tower roof. Naruto sat on the roof in a meditative position. His white cloak along with the black flak jacket lay folded up next to him, leaving him in only his baggy pants, shoes and a black mesh shirt that clung to his body, showing off his athletic muscles. He felt as Raven's presence formed upon the roof in a show of shadows. "Why hello," he said, not bothering to open his eyes, let alone get up from his position. Raven only stood there, the hood of her cloak pulled back, letting her hair flow with the breeze that mysteriously appeared on the roof at the time. She could only stare at the young man who had to be no older than her, the man who had single-handedly destroyed her father and acted like it was nothing. "Who are you?" she asked after what felt like a century of silence, or more importantly, what are you? She asked again. He only sat there for a second before vanishing in a flash of speed that would make Kid know, that would make Flash himself jealous. He was at her side in less than a second, only mere centimeters separated them as he spoke. "My name is Naruto, and I don't know what I am anymore." Shock was the only thing that one could describe it, as the look on Raven's face must have been priceless before she quickly collected herself. "What do you mean you don't know?" she asked him, her head turning to look at him and watch as he turned to look off into what seemed like endless an ocean. I mean it is hard to tell what I am anymore. I used to be a knuckle-headed ninja, he said, a faint smile gracing his features. Then I became some child of prophecy, if you can believe it, he said again. The light in his eyes seemed to dim slightly, raising questions in Raven's mind. Then I became some sort of champion of, I guess, the old gods. A slight quiver in his voice as he kept himself from breaking apart. Though last time I checked I became a king of atrocious beings, he sneered, beings that took pleasure in death and suffering, beings that raped and killed others for the hell of it, no pun intended, he said again as he turned to look Raven in the eye. Against my will and unknown to the gods till it was all too late, he said for an almost dramatic pause, I became the king of hell, he said looking Raven in the eye before telling her his story starting from the very beginning. It wasn't long till he finished. He stared at her, expecting her to scream and run, to call him a monster. Hell, he expected her to even attack him. But what happened he'll probably remember for the rest of his unnatural life. Her eyes sprung tears as she looked at him, her hand over her mouth, but only for a second before she latched onto him, sobbing her eyes out. Thank you, she said between sobs as she tried to bury her face into his shoulder, telling her own sad story. He could only stand there stupefied before wrapping his arms around her in a gentle embrace, offering soothing words to her, trying to help her pull herself together. Thank you, she said as she looked him in the eyes, a gentle gleam and reciprocating between them. What for? He asked, a small smile gracing his lips. Thank you for accepting me, she told him as she slowly tried to lean forward and pull him closer. Stop, Raven, I'll admit you're undeniably beautiful, but I'm not the only one to accept you, he said motioning towards the door. Your friends who are listening to this have also accepted you long before I ever came into play. Announcing loudly that he knew that the rest of the Titans were on the other side of the roof door. Also, I won't be the last, and two, I want to get to know you first before anything. I want to get to know the real you, not the one who hides behind that mask of indifference, he said, finishing his speech as the Titans fell through the door. Or well, the guys did. Starfire, well. How glorious, our new friend has befriended friend Raven. We shall celebrate with Flognard Toblert, she said, giving Naruto the biggest bear hug she could while spinning around in the air at amazing speeds, which only succeeded in causing Naruto to explode into a cloud of smoke. Holy shit, Starfire just killed the new guy. Cyborg exclaimed quite loudly, Robin and Beast Boy both wearing WTF mask on their faces, not being able to believe what they just saw. Well, that was a little harsh on the ears, Naruto said, acting as if he was cleaning out his ears with his finger. All heads seemed to snap in his direction, seeing him now decked out in different clothing. You know, I try to get a little workout, and the next thing I know I find out she killed my clone. Glad to know I'm appreciated for the things I do, he said, acting as if he was dusting off what had to be training apparel. I have a feeling life just got a lot more interesting, was all Robin could say, almost speaking what was on everyone's mind. So what happens now? Naruto asked as he picked up his cloak and jacket off the ground while giving the Titans an expecting look. Well, I don't know, you could always join us, Robin offered, trying to give off a cool-like persona. I'm not sure I want to join the circus, Naruto said in a non-caring-like manner. What the hell do you mean circus? We're heroes, you ass, Cyborg said, clenching his fist. Well, I have nothing against you, you look pretty badass, he said to the man-machine, before turning to look at the others. You guys look like the circus. Hell, Green Boy here looks like he took a dive into green dye. Hey, I take offense to that, Beast Boy said as he huffed, crossing his arms over one another. And I'm sorry, I mean no offense to either of you, but seriously, being a superhero doesn't mean you have to be dressed like one 24/7, Naruto said, holding his hands up in a manner that looked like he was defending himself, if only slightly. Well, what's wrong with that? Robin asked as he raised an eyebrow. His mask seemingly followed suit. What I'm trying to say is you guys look like you never relax and be a teen. Look, you only get to be a teen once, just don't waste it, and it's not like I'm saying for you to give up on being heroes. Don't ever let that cross your mind. I did and people died, but don't let this time pass you, Naruto said as he made his way over to the edge of the roof before stepping on the ledge. This is like my second chance to be a teenager, and I plan to enjoy it, but if you ever need me, Naruto paused as he pulled out a tri-pronged kunai and tossed it to Raven. All you ever need to do is throw this at the ground and it'll be there in a flash, he finished as he walked off the edge of the roof. A blinding crimson light shimmered around him before it disappeared. 4 of the 5 Titans ran to the edge, trying to see if they could spot where he went or if he was hurt, but Raven looked out the corner of her eye as she saw far across the water a similar flash of red light appear. The blonde stood there with a smile on his face as he waved to her before disappearing once again. It's no use, guys, I can't find him anywhere in the city. It's like he just disappeared, Cyborg said as he scanned Jump City for the blonde's presence. Don't worry, he'll never be too far away, Raven told them as she looked at the odd-looking object in her hand. What makes you think that? Robin asked as he got a clear view of what Raven was holding. I don't know, but I feel like we just got a very powerful ally that you should be careful with, Raven said as she knew how Robin didn't like to be told what to do. Friend Robin, what is that taped to your cape? Starfire asked, drawing everyone's attention to Robin's back. Cyborg merely pulled it off of him as he checked it out. "It's an envelope," he said simply as he ripped it open. Everyone tried to crowd around him as he looked at said envelope. "What's it say?" Beast Boy asked as he tried to get a better look at it. "It says to relax," Cyborg said as he handed the note to Robin for him to look at. "Well, Raven, you did say that we just got a powerful ally who said we should try and enjoy what little time we have as teenagers," Robin said as he tucked the note into his utility belt. "And maybe Hess right, so wo's up for pizza?" he asked as he pulled off his cape. "Booyah, now that's what I'm talking about," Cyborg said as he and Beast Boy did a quick victory dance. "Well guys, put on something nice, we're going out," Robin said as he left for the door. With one last look at to the ocean, Raven turned to follow her team, a small smile on her face as she clutched the kunai to her chest, a single tear running down her face. "Thank you Naruto," was all she said, and probably all she had to say. It started out as just another day, having been a month since Hess showed up in this world. For Naruto, wake up, brush his teeth, and then leave to explore this new world he found himself in to help him better prepare for the future, train in the forest, and then teleported back to his apartment to take a shower. Now, not too long ago, the Titans made an announcement that they were to be leaving to visit Starfire's homeworld and that they would have Titans East come in and sub for them. He paused for a moment, letting the soap flow from his golden hair while he closed his eyes. He let himself reminisce about his encounter with the other heroes and his eventual run-in with the Justice League. In his eyes, the meeting had gone rather well, in some way. Flashback. He had stumbled into the city of Metropolis only a few days ago, not really remembering how or when he left Jump City. The whole way they ran things nowadays seemed to confuse him. He could understand why the individual cities didn't have walls, as they had no reason to fear an invasion, somewhat. It wasn't really the invasion of other countries they had to worry about, but more like the invasion of alien species that they've had to deal with in the past. Even with the constant threat of a foreign species trying to enslave them or plain devour them, they really had nothing to fear, really, with the amount of superheroes popping up every other day was astounding, not to mention the giant-ass space station orbiting their planet called the Watchtower, said space station home to the most well-known heroes on Earth, the Justice League. He was quickly thrown from his thoughts as he watched several police cars suddenly fly by him. It was at this time he saw a billow of smoke rise into the sky after what sounded like gunfire and some kind of explosion, taking out one of his tri-pronged kunai. He channeled a deadly combination of wind and nature chakra into the weapon before he threw it in the direction of where the smoke originated. One could probably describe the after effects as something akin to a loud sonic boom that blasted into the air everything and one around him, who had been apprehensive at first when he drew the odd weapon, was suddenly thrown away, a few only to land on their asses. When they looked back at the seemingly unnatural blonde, all they could saw was a flash of crimson light with a hint of black around it. He reappeared on top of a building across the street of what appeared to be a bank robbery of sorts as he watched two groups of people seem to be engaging each other. One group he could easily tell was the Justice League, the other seemed to be a few supervillains a little out of their own natural environment, as this group of supervillains was more commonly found in the city of Gotham. The two groups consisted of Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman versus the Joker, Harley Quinn, and surprisingly enough Poison Ivy, who in fact does little to hide her distaste in Joker and she does little to hide her distaste in the Joker as a whole. The fight seemed to be leaning in favor of the good guys, that was before Joker admitted that he had heard that Superman's weakness was kryptonite. After that, it wasn't too long before the three heroes found themselves dangling by their feet, hands bound as they were held by hundreds of vines. "Oh, how the mighty have fallen, Batman," the Joker cried out as he laughed manically before he slugged the Dark Knight in the stomach rather ruthlessly, and with each punch his insane grin seemed to stretch more and more to try and reach his ears. "Oh Mr. Ajay, don't hog all the fun to yourself," Harley cried out with a pout as she wanted to mess with the three heroes, or that was before she was slugged in the face by the insane clown. "Mr. Ajay," she cried out as she clutched her face, tears threatening to spill from her face. She looked up only to have to look down the barrel of a revolver the Joker held to her face. "Oh Harley, 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 it was funny at first, and with all the people here it's time for your final Joe." Ah. He never finished, as where his hand once was now just a bloody stump, or that's what he saw as everyone just stared as the man started screaming, looking at his hand as if it was the cause of his torment. It was at this point Naruto dropped from the sky, and from the large crater and the amount of dust that had been kicked up, he fell from quite the height. It wasn't too long before the dust settled, revealing Naruto in all his glory. In an instant all eyes were on him, as everyone ignored Joker's cries of pain. Ivy looked apprehensively at the young man, as her vines seemed to want to reach out and touch the young man who radiated such a godly aura. "Sorry if I'm a little late," was all he said, as he did a simple gesture, as if he was waving something away. Not even a second later, the vines that bound the heroes' feet were cut to tiny pieces, dropping the heroes on the ground unceremoniously. Everyone froze in place at his display of power, seemingly slack-jawed at what the boy had done. Harley could only scoot away from the boy no man as he approached her, blushing as she took in his features. It wasn't long before he was right in front of her, looking down at the older-looking woman with a frown on his face before he squat down, resting on the balls of his feet as he reached a hand out to touch her cheek, only for her to flinch. Her eyes were clenched shut as she expected to feel the sting of a slap, only for the earlier sting to vanish as if it was never there. Opening her eyes, she looked into the caring eyes of the man in front of her as his hand glowed with a green tint. "That should feel better now, don't you think?" he said as he stood up, leaving something to rest on her lap, and walked over to where the Joker was whimpering in pain. Naruto only looked down at the man before releasing his genjutsu. "No one, and I mean no one, hits a woman in front of me, you lower than trash bastard." The blonde yelled before kicking the clown in the nuts hard enough to send the man flying into the opposite wall of the building that was constructed out of cement. In less than a second, the blonde found himself strung up by vines and held in front of the woman with flaming red hair and green tinted skin. "Oh, I won't try that, Ivy," was all he said before he placed his hand on the surrounding vines, wood-style vanishing forest. In less than a second, all the natural life in the room seemed to burrow into the ground and disappear as if it had never existed. Ivy once again went slack-jawed as the blonde showed his control over the natural life. With a flip of his wrist, he sent one of his prized kunai in the direction of the still tied-up heroes, as they could only watch as this newcomer made things turn in his favor. He disappeared in his signature flash and reappeared where his weapon landed, which was right in front of the three heroes' faces. To say they were shocked would have been the understatement of the century, as they all seemed to jump at his sudden appearance. It was also then they realized that when the boy used his wood technique, whatever that the vines that had bound their wrist also went with the other plant life. It was when he looked them all in the eye that they saw unrestrained power hidden in the depths of his eyes. "My name is Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. I am from a time before this civilization could even hope to remember, and it'll give you the warning the gods gave me when I was deemed champion. There is an evil coming, and all of the Justice League, along with every single Teen Titan, will be needed for this upcoming threat, and I promise you have never seen an enemy like this one, so you better prepare. Or every living being on this planet and all the rest will die." With that, he left them his kunai, telling them if they ever needed anything to throw it at the ground. With that, he vanished in the same flash he appeared in. When the heroes finally got their wits about them, they collected the Joker as they were unable to locate Ivy and Harley, having never noticed them sneak out after they heard what the kunai was for. Flashback over. He was brought out of his thoughts as he felt a pulling sensation in the back of his mind, signaling the activation of one of his kunai. He could only let his head droop down, as he knew what would happen next was going to be very, very awkward. As quick as he could, he kicked the faucet handle down to turn off the water he was taking a shower with before vanishing in his infamous flash. Just a few minutes ago. "Do you, Starfire, take this man to be your husband?" Blackfire asked, a malicious grin sneaking its way upon her face. The princess never got her chance to finish, as Robin chose that precise moment to call out her name as loud as he could while trying not to get stabbed or cut in half by Blackfire's guard. "That's all a trick, don't do it," he called out as he hopped over the ledge, landing in a shoulder roll to make sure he didn't break his legs. The other titans arriving in their respective ways, Cyborg blasting a hole through the wall with Raven and Beast Boy climbing through it. With a look of determination, Starfire turned back to face her sister and gave her answer, "I do." At first, Blackfire's shit-eating grin seemed to only get larger before she heard what the princess said next. "Not. How dare you throw this away? You will not ruin my plans a second time, little sister." Blackfire exclaimed as she powered up her star bolts that glowed a deep maroon-like color. "With the Jewel of Charda, I will rule Tamaran, and you will not stop this from happening." She yelled again as she discharged energy from her eyes, aiming to hit her younger sister, who miraculously got out of the way in time. "Oh, but I will ruin your plans, sister, as I, Princess of Tamaran Starfire, challenge you for the crown of Tamaran." The red-haired princess yelled as loud as she could, her voice seemingly echoing throughout the kingdom as she fired off bolts of her own energy, nailing her sister in the chest, making her challenge as official as one could get. As they continued to literally beat the hell out of each other, trying their best to overpower the other. It stayed like this till out of the corner of the red-headed sister's eye she saw her friends try to jump in and help her, only to get stopped by the man that had been her caretaker as a child. It was this brief moment, this oh-so small window of opportunity, that Blackfire capitalized on as it gave her the fraction of the power to finally bring her younger sibling to her knees. "No, Starfire." Robin yelled, only to once again be held back by the big burly man that was Galfor. "I'm sorry, but I cannot let you intervene in these matters," the man said, standing in the teen's way. "Then you're just going to let it end for her like this?" the kid demanded, looking the caretaker in the eyes. "I'm sorry, but all who've heard the challenge cannot intervene by threat of immediate death. That is our tradition, that is our law," he said, tearing his eyes from the boy's gaze to look somewhere else, hoping to hide the emotions that ran through them. "Then what if we had someone else step in and take her place?" Raven asked. At this point the group was searching for anything to give them the upper hand. Well, theoretically yes you could, but again they too are not allowed to if they have heard the challenge, and as you can see everyone here has heard the challenge. Who do you hope to bring here in time to save her? Balfour asked, eyeing the lavender-haired teen with a scrutinizing stare. She reacted quickly, pulling out the one thing to save her friend, a tri-pronged kunai knifan. Or maybe you could call it a fork. I need to put more thought into that, huh? I think I will just call on a friend, she said, her team suddenly going wide-eyed as they saw what she pulled out. Do you think Naruto will help us? Beast Boy asked, eyeing the kunai wearily, having touched it once only to get his ass beat into the ground by Raven. You make it sound like he won't, Raven said with that oh so rare smile of hers. With a flick of her wrist, she tossed the weapon with precision, harnessed only from continuous practice which was achieved thanks to Robin. Now this on itself had Balfour turn on her, ready to detain her, only for what happened next to stop him. Flying across the room, the kunai stuck straight into the ground between Starfire and her older sister Blackfire. In less than a second later, there was a large flash of crimson light, surrounded by an even darker light that bordered on the line of just pure unadulterated darkness. Once the light vanished, there stood Naruto, literally, in all his glory. At this moment in time every single member of the female species seemed to have the same simultaneous reaction, as they were all launched back in an explosive nosebleed. It was their reaction to the naked blonde that also made every single man in the room feel somewhat inadequate. Sheesh, you're all perverts calling on a man while he's taking a shower, the blonde joked while sheepishly scratching the back of his head, doing nothing to hide his dignity, channeling chakra to a seal on his chest. He was hidden effectively as puff of smoke erupted around him. The smoke dissipating a second later, revealing him to be standing in a pair of black Anbu-style pants, along with his sage cloak open to reveal his physique that seemed to again make every male in the room feel a slight bit inadequate, along with metal-plated black combat boots and a set of black gloves that were also metal-plated, the leaf symbol etched into the metal plating. All in all, the sight was definitely badass. So this is who you plan to take Starfire's place? Balfour asked. As to him, the boy didn't look like he could truly take on one of Tamaran's warriors and live. Sir, with all due respect, no one on this planet could stop that man right there, so what does he have to do to take Star's place? Robin said as he wanted to get the one he loved out of danger as fast as he could. He must announce his titles and lay them on the line as he challenges the Grand Ruler for the crown, Balfour said, a little irked about how one single man could possibly take on a planet of super-powered warriors and live, but with how Robin spoke, he didn't want to test if that claim was true or not. But the nod Raven appeared by the blonde side, informing him of the situation and telling him what he must do before quickly flying back over to her team. He said, hell do it, she said, allowing them to all let out a sigh of relief. At this moment in time, Blackfire finally pulled herself together to look at the new player, carefully observing him as he stood there staring at her with a hard gaze. Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, Prince of Whirlpool, true heir to the Sage of Six Paths, second Flash of Konoha, second Toad Sage of Konoha, hero of Wave Country, hero of Snow Country, slayer of the Demon Jubi. Third Jinchuriki of Kyuubi no Kitsune, ex-captain of the Anbu Death Squad, sixth Hokage of Konoha, demon of the leaf, last and only descendant of the Uzumaki and Namikaze bloodlines, child of destiny, blonde immortal of Konoha, and champion of the gods, challenge you for the crown of Tamaran. He declared as he closed his eyes to hide the fact that he activated his Rinnegan. Now everyone slack-jawed at the number of titles he held under his name, some even a little unnerved at the one when he referred to him being a demon. You can't do that. Blackfire demanded as she charged up her red starbolt. But Grand Ruler, you know as well as I he was not here to hear the challenge, and you cannot deny a challenge to the crown, Balfour said, successfully hiding the smirk that wanted to play upon his lips. I hate traditions. Fine, you want to play it that way, prepare to be a smear on the ground. She yelled as she held her hands above her head, charging a rather large starbolt which she didn't waste time as she hurled it down towards the out-of-place blonde. The collision seemed to kick up a lot of dust as it also left a crater 2 feet deep and 5 feet wide. In all essence, it looked like she won. Well, he wasn't so tough, she said with a smug grin. Balfour looked at the Titans only to see them still completely relaxed, looking at the fight. His eyes widened as he saw the blonde still standing there unscathed. Really, is that all? Fine, then I guess it's my turn, the blonde said as he finally opened his eyes, revealing dark sapphire-colored eyes, along with several rings surrounding his slitted pupil. Raising his hand, he said 2 simple words that most would simply ignore: Bancho Tenon. The next thing Blackfire knew was she was flying towards the blonde against her will, and no matter how hard she fought it, nothing changed her situation. In less than a second she found herself held up by her throat, suspended a foot off the ground by the new guy. Reaching up, he tore the jewel of Charta off her chest before crushing it in his palm. Quickly slamming her into the ground, he pulled out a sharp black pointy rod and held it at her throat. To think you would harm family like that, your only family like that by the way, such a disregard for life would mean you hold the same for yourself, so it'll give you 3 options. First, you could die and become my puppet. Second, I could forcibly remove your soul with you dying in the process and probably becoming my puppet. Last option is you surrender. You apologize to me for yelling you'd turn me into a smear on the ground and you beg for forgiveness from your sister. So which is it? Naruto asked as he whispered in her ear, his voice as cold as ice, allowing her to see her death repeatedly. Using one of the hands clutching his arm in a vain attempt to get him to let go, she held up 3 fingers as his grip barely allowed her to breathe, so speaking was out of the question. Good, he said as he let go of her throat. Not a second later, she called out her immediate surrender. Earning several gasps from the spectators of the fight at how quickly he had ended the fight with the Grand Ruler. I'm sorry for my ignorance and humbly ask for your apology, she cried out as she bowed at his feet as she tried her best not to cry, as it was clear from the sob she let out when she was talking. Your apology has been accepted, now go, he said, receiving a quick nod in return before she ran and did the same thing at Starfire's feet. Raven quietly walked up to the blonde hero, asking what he said to the female. I only threatened her with the dark side of one of my many techniques, was all he told her, not wanting her to dive any further into his scary side. Well, we should get going, shouldn't we? He asked as he felt that familiar grumble in his stomach when he craved ramen. Our ship needs to be repaired, so we're not leaving anytime soon, she said with a frown. Nonsense, have everyone change into casual clothes, we're all going out for ramen tonight, he said, receiving a questioning gaze, only to give her a shooing motion. And her go off to tell her friends and all of them go to retrieve their stuff from the ship and go to change. Turning, he walked up to the man that not a moment ago was holding Starfire in something akin to a father's embrace. Hey all buddy, all friend, all pal, I as Grand Ruler hereby instate you as the one to take my place once I leave. I hope I can trust you to keep the people of Tamaran happy, he said, patting the man on the shoulder, as if they had known each other their whole lives, before walking over to Blackfire. Blackfire, I hereby make you a ward of under my name, do not try anything, because as long as you are I will always be able to find you, he said as he poked her forehead, and several black lines swirled around the tip of his finger to make a symbol. It was of something akin to a whirlpool in design. I cannot and will not banish you, as long as you are my ward and are under my protection. If ever you're in danger and no one's around to help, this will act as a beacon for me to teleport to. Got it? He asked. His only response was a simple nod of the head and widened eyes. Good, and with that he walked away to go seal up the Titan spacecraft. When everybody finally showed in what were the closest things they had to civilian clothing, he held out his hand to Raven, and to all hold each other's hands. Raven held his right hand with Cyborg on her other side, followed by Beast Boy, Robin, and then Starfire, who also held his left hand. Alright Raymond, here we come. He yelled out as they all vanished in his signature crimson energy. Thanks for watching, also remember to subscribe and like this video, see you in the next video.